As a newcomer to the keyboard community looking for recommendations, you might look for a nice keyboard with a numpad. The usual answer to this question on Reddit would just get you a 60% or TKL with an external numpad. The argument goes that this offers flexibility. However, there is something to be said about a form factor that integrates it all into one board. You don't have to deal with an extra cable or moving the two parts separately on your desk. The Vortex Vibe is one such implementation that I think hits the sweet spot between practicality and compactness. It comes in a funny tube, which sort of sets it apart from other packaging, I guess. I haven't actually seen a Vortex product in a brick and mortar store, so I'm not so sure if it'll be very effective, but it's interesting at the very least. Inside you get the board, a cable, and some extra keycaps. These extra keycaps are a really nice little bonus. You get a variety of replacement colors for escape, the two enters, and the numlock, as well as the spacebar. With the blue ones, you can get sort of a DSA quartz look, while using a combination will get you something that roughly resembles DSA granite. While I prefer high-profile designs, I think the Vibe is low-profile done right. The bottom case is really thin, and the height of the keycaps roughly match the height of the case. This symmetry is separated by the gap provided by the switches, which I think is a cool look. The other big thing is that there is only maybe a single millimeter worth of bezel. When looking down on it, there is almost no case sticking out outside the area covered by the keycaps. I think this creates a very clean look. Take this in contrast to the K-Type, which has a huge bezel that ruins some of its aesthetic potential. Another thing I like is the sharp corners. Oftentimes, corners will be rounded due to restrictions by tooling, but the corners on the Vibe are well defined and complements the low profile design. I really like the little gap between the keyboard and the numpad, which reduces some of the visual clutter that can happen in such layouts. Overall, I think the Vibe gets full marks in the design department. Like most other recent Vortex boards, the Vibe has a metal case that helps in making it feel premium. Though it's not particularly heavy at just 1 pound and 11 ounces, it doesn't feel cheap by any means. I think they could have made it heavier, but that would have meant sacrificing some of the design elements that emphasize thinness, which I think is more important. It uses a black painted steel plate, which is tray mounted to the case. There are plenty of screw down points, which I think make for a pretty solid typing experience. The keycaps are pretty interesting as well. They're using uniform row 3 SA, which just means every row uses the third row in the sculpted version. The result is a flat profile that's really tall. Because the case is so thin, this doesn't hurt typing ergonomics, but I think it looks better on this board than something like DSA. As far as SA goes, these aren't particularly thick. Double-shot SA keycaps tend to have a stepped shape, where the top of the keycap is much thicker than the bottom. But these are still pretty thick when compared to other stock keyboards, so I won't complain too much. One of the strong points for the Vibe is just how good the stabilizers are. There is absolutely zero rattle on any of the keys, including the spacebar. This is really uncommon in off-the-shelf keyboards and is seldom advertised, but it really improves the overall typing experience on the board. The layout on the Vibe is essentially a numpad glued to a poker. The interesting thing about this numpad is that the 0 key is split into a 0 and a double 0. This is to allow the numpad to pull double duty in acting as a navigation cluster. When numlock is off, 2, 00, 0, and period become arrows, and numbers 4 through 9 become the other navigation keys found in a TKL. In this configuration, there is not a separation between the arrow keys and the other navigation keys, which may be an argument for improved ergonomics. Another similar point is that by combining the nav cluster and the numpad to a single location, you reduce hand travel when working with something like a spreadsheet. You just need to toggle the numlock to switch between data entry and navigation. Another layer of interest for me is the fact that you can also use the function layer. To more effectively use the feature, you're going to want to first move the function key to something more accessible, which for me is the caps lock. You can make this switch by holding down the function key and the left shift for 5 seconds and then letting go. The LED under the spacebar should turn blue at this point. Then press caps lock or whatever key you want to move the function to, and when the blue LED appears, the change should have been made. The main thing I would encourage people to try using would be the arrow keys on a layer. Caps lock and IJKL is the arrows, and this can greatly improve the ergonomics when all you need to do is move back or forward a couple characters. I think combining the full functionality of a 60% with an option for dedicated nav cluster and numpad offers flexibility that's only seen in more custom offerings. You can further customize it to your liking through programming. Up to this point, I've only ever programmed keyboards that use some kind of flashing, like TMK or QMK, so the hardware programming is a bit unusual to me and harder to use. I won't go into it in this video, but there are manuals and videos elsewhere. Regardless, I think the Vibe's layout and function key usage is a great first step for anybody who wants to downsize but are not so sure about giving up too many keys. My Vibe is built with Cherry MX Reds. These are the retooled version, which are incredibly smooth and pleasant to type on. I found myself bottoming out on these a lot as they're really light. Let's have a listen. I can confidently say that this is one of the best typing experiences on an unmodded retail keyboard that I've ever owned. The good switches paired with good keycaps, stabilizers, and case really make for a superior experience compared to its peers. I can really get behind the Vibe as sort of an entry keyboard to the hobby. It offers a lot of flexibility, and the numpad can act as a tester to see if you can benefit from moving smaller and smaller. I can confidently recommend this for anyone trying to get into the game. It's in stock over at mechanicalkeyboards.com for $140 and $150 depending on the switches, and Massdrop has had it before too, and they'll probably come back at some point. I think these are really fair prices to pay for what you're getting. For that kind of money, you can buy whatever RGB mess offered by Corsair and Logitech, but you'll be missing out on the fantastic typing experience and the interesting layout. Thank you for watching, and if you liked the video, like it and subscribe for more. I don't really own too many retail boards, but I know reviews are probably more useful for things you can actually buy, so I'll see what I can do.